Hello, everyone, and welcome to our RealGreen Wavelytics webinar today. My name is Danielle McCarthy. I'm the Director of Product Marketing for Wavelytics, and we're really happy to have you here today. Presenting today, we have our fantastic Senior Product Manager and Wavelytic expert, Alan, who you may have had the opportunity to meet with at the conference a few weeks ago. David Liebsman, aka DL, is traveling overseas and will unfortunately not be able to join us today. Let's take a quick look at our agenda. We'll start with housekeeping and notes, jump into our product updates, and then we'll spend time, as always, at the end trying to answer as many questions live as possible. For the housekeeping notes, at the end of today's session, we'll share a QR code for anyone who wants to receive early launch updates and timing details for Wavelytics Decision Intelligence. If you're interested in being first to hear what's coming, you'll be able to scan the code and fill out a short form, and I'll remind you again as we wrap up. And then also for this webinar, be sure to ask questions through the session using the Zoom Q&A function. We'll save time at the end for Q&As and answer as many live with our product experts as we can. This session is also being recorded, and it will be live in the communities in the webinar section, where you can actually find a repository of a lot of the recent webinars we've had. And lastly, if you'd like to connect with me to discuss a co-branded testimonial or tell your RealGreen Wavelytics story, you can reach out to me directly, Danielle McCarthy, Steve McCarthy at WorkWave, and I'd be happy to chat with you. My email will be on the last slide of the webinar, so you can grab it there. And now I will pass it over to Alan.
Awesome. Thanks, Danielle. So yeah, we will get into the meat of the presentation here. As Danielle said, definitely throw those questions into the Q&A feature as we go. Some we may hold for the end, but some if they're relevant to kind of what we're talking about at the time, we may just jump in on those and give you answers as we go to keep the conversation going. So don't be shy about participating. We are going to go through kind of the overall offering here, where we stand on Wavelytics. So if you were at the customer conference, you may find a lot of this stuff familiar, but we're happy to have you back. And if you weren't able to attend, then this will be a lot of new stuff here, which should be exciting. So we'll give an overview. I do want to spend a decent amount of time demoing today and not just talking to slides, so you guys can get a real understanding of what the offering is and where we stand currently, and then where we're going in the near future roadmap wise. So just to start us out, we've the solution that we're providing, we've built it really on best in class technology, so that as we deliver it to you, to our customers, you have something that is built to last and is at kind of the forefront of the industry and tooling that's available right now. And just for some context on that, so as we talk about the product offerings, you'll hear about Snowflake being the kind of tool that we use to deliver the foundation of these data products that we offer. We've gone with Snowflake because they're the best in class cloud data solution. Not a ton of argument there. I think pretty good consensus in the industry, and we'll talk a little bit about why they make sense as a partner and why they kind of make the best fit in terms of how we can deliver you data in the best way possible. So that's kind of the foundation of the stack, and then for the what we would call the front end of the data stack, where you're seeing the analytics, and we're going to talk about decision intelligence as we get into the presentation here. We use Sigma for that. And Sigma maybe not as big of a brand name as Snowflake. A lot of people have probably heard of Snowflake, huge player in the market. Sigma does not have the market share that Snowflake has, but we feel really confident that they're the best tool for the purpose, because they work really well together with Snowflake, and they have some kind of shared roadmap items there, so that we're confident that those tools will move forward together. And also, we feel like Sigma is really pushing the boundaries when it comes to using AI for decision intelligence, for dashboarding, for analytics. So that's where we want to be, right? We want to be ahead instead of behind in terms of the tools that we're partnering with. And then, I think it goes without saying at this stage that we're cloud first, right? This is built on a modern architecture that will scale with us and with you as we grow together. So that's really the goal, to build all this cool stuff on a best-in-class stack as it currently exists, so that we're kind of future-proofing ourselves here. So um, when we look at when we talk about Wavelytics, right? So that's kind of the foundation and the tooling that we're using. When we talk about Wavelytics, what does that mean? Like, what are we offering? And so we can think about it. There's kind of two core parts of that, and then a third part that we can talk about as well. So really, the two core parts are the data factory and decision intelligence. The data factory being that foundation that we were talking about, the data that we both use to produce the decision intelligence, but also that we can deliver to you as a standalone product to interact with on your own. And then the decision intelligence being, how do we take that data and turn that into actionable information that we can use to make decisions, and to kind of drive our business forward. And then the last piece that we talk about here, and we won't get into this a ton today, but this is something that we could talk about more in the future for those who are interested. We do have the notion of self-serve analytics, which means the ability to create your own kind of custom analytics off of the data that's delivered. And there are kind of multiple ways that you can think about self-service. There are some that are available out of the box, and then there are some that are you know that sort of fall into this offering. And we can talk about the differentiation there as we go through. But really, the core thing to understand here is there's two offerings, right? The data factory and decision intelligence, and then self-serve is available as an add-on. So we're going to talk about, for the bulk of today's conversation, we're going to talk about the data factory. We're going to talk about decision intelligence, what each of those things offer, and the use cases for each of those, and how they're relevant for your business. So let's start with the data factory. Um, the data factory is the foundation for all of the interesting and fun and exciting insights and tools that we can deliver on top of it. The the critical thing to understand here is that we cannot deliver all of the stuff that we want to be able to make, whether it's analytics, whether it's forecasts, whether it's machine learning, whether it's conversational AI, whether it's generative AI. We can't deliver any of that stuff unless we have a rock solid foundation on which to build. And that is what the data factory is, right? So we needed to build this in order to be able to build everything else that we're going to deliver. But in addition to building it for ourselves to be able to deliver the things we need to deliver, we also built it to what we consider to be product grade, which means that we can deliver it to our customers to use for themselves. And so this is a tool that does require a little bit of technical know-how. This is a tool probably for organizations that have some, or are looking to make some investment in technical resources, either in-house or consulting resources, who could interact with this data and kind of build custom things on top of it. Um, the value here is, obviously it takes significant engineering resources to build something like this, and really what it is a what it says at the top there, a packaged curated data warehouse, right? So what that means is we've taken all of the data that is inside of RealGreen, that is in all of the different tables and structured and difficult to use and understand ways, and uh, brought that all together in a clean, structured warehouse that we can use to produce analytics on top of it, right? So that everything is named in a way that makes sense, everything is readable, all of the tables are organized in a way that you would that you would organize them from a business perspective in order to use them for analytics, as opposed to the way they're designed in the application, which is to serve up information to a screen in a software product, right? So this is really the product, is the data warehouse that allows both us and you as customers to build analytics on top of it. Uh, so we talk about being AI ready. You can't build AI tooling on top of data that is messy or that is poorly structured or poorly named, or without proper governance. So this really allows both us and customers, if they want to build things on top of that, to have data that is structured intentionally to be used by this new sort of generation of AI tooling. Um, you know, AI analysts, AI agents, were sort of purpose built for that use case, as opposed to trying to retrofit some of those tools onto existing data sets that were never designed to handle that. So purpose built for that. Um, the other thing that's great about the data factory, when we talk about Snowflake as the partner, is we can deliver the data via Snowflake share, which is in our terminology a zero copy database. So there's no more ETLs, there's no more pipelines, there's no more making sure that the data loaded correctly. It's a share from our Snowflake environment to yours. So this does require creating a Snowflake environment. Creating an environment is free. There's no charge to store the data. There is charge for consumption, which means running queries against the data and sort of producing your own analytics, but actually setting up the account and receiving the data, there's no charge for that from Snowflake. And the share is delivered from us to you via a secure view, which means that you have a direct look into the data, and there's no downtime. There's no, oh, the database was building, so this query returned unusual results. It's just there all the time. Current standard refresh time is every 4 hours. We are looking into some changes there, but current standard offering is every 4 hours, which means essentially the data is always up to date. We do provide you with some help to get started with a data dictionary that kind of defines the structure of the warehouse, and then also some starter queries that show you kind of how to get going with the data, how to utilize it, how the relationships between the tables work, and just kind of get you started there. I will say that we do our best to make it so that you really don't need a lot of documentation or a lot of time to ramp up to take advantage of the warehouse. But we do provide that data dictionary and those starter queries to kind of get you started and get you thinking about how the data relates and understand how to start building some things out. So that's the data factory, giving you that foundation to build whatever you could need to build. And we see really two primary use cases that we think about with customers. One being there are some organizations that just really want to own their own analytics, and they want to build their own stuff, and they want to build their own kind of dashboards, and own those pipelines and deliver that internally. And this gives you the ability to do that. So you have all your data, it's pre-structured. You can do whatever you need to do with it. You want to connect that to your own BI tool, Power BI, Tableau, Sigma, whatever you use. Able to do that and use it, you know, kind of to your heart's content there. And then the other use case is we have a lot of customers who pair this with the decision intelligence, and we'll talk about the decision intelligence in a minute. But so that would mean kind of using our analytics and all the things we're offering there, but maybe there's some custom stuff they want to build, right? There's some edge cases, there's some very specific things to their org that they would like to see that would not necessarily be something that we would offer out of the box. And so, they have the full suite of our decision intelligence, but in addition to that, want to build some custom stuff kind of on the side that is sort of tailored to their organization. So gives you the full flexibility to do that. We can look
Hey,
uh,
Alan.
at. Mhm.
One question.
Yep.
Does the question came in, does it connect Google Ads for pay per click tracking? I think I think they're asking if Snowflake does, which I believe the answer is yes. Snowflake connects directly to Google Ads, but that was a question that came through.
Yeah, you could. It's your Snowflake environment, so full featured, access there. You could connect straight to GA4 and pull in whatever you need to do there. We don't currently pull that data into RealGreen, so there's not a I don't it might be depending on how cleanly structured your GA4 data is. I don't know how well you could tie that into the what's happening inside of RealGreen, like customers and that sort of thing. But absolutely, you could use Snowflake as your warehouse or your lake house to hold all those data sets.
And then will this be available in the UK?
Yes. We have customers in the UK on other products. I don't think we have customers in the UK on RealGreen yet, but we do have customers who have the data share in the UK on other products at WorkWave.
That's all.
Cool. So let's look at a quick tour of what this actually looks like. So this is the Snowflake UI. I'll zoom in a little bit just in case for anybody on a smaller screen. So what this looks like is really a database, right? So this is the catalog. You wouldn't have all of these things. You would just have kind of this warehouse schema on your side. And so we can see in here, here's all the tables that are available. For those who are familiar with the concept of a data warehouse, this is a very straightforward star schema setup where you have dimensions and you have facts. And so the facts tell you sort of about something that you want to know about your business, like an invoice, right? So if we look at fact invoice, we can see one thing that's nice in here is you'll see nice table descriptions. So there's good metadata to interact with these for both human readability and also machine readability if we want to start putting AI and machine learning on top of here. And then if you look in at the table, you can see the column names. I'm just going to reorder these real quick. So you can see, right? So this is everything about an invoice, right? When was the service completed? When was the invoice paid? Who was you can see the customer key, invoice type key, the amounts. And then if you wanted to know who the actual customer was, right? Because this is just the key, you would join it back to the dim customer table. And then if you look at the dim customer table, that then holds all of the information that you could ever want to have about a customer, right? So there's tons of fields in here so that you can see um, everything everything about that customer, right? There's um, tax ID information, contact information, um, payment types, uh, kind of everything that could be associated there, yard size, house cost, all the information about the property and everything is there in that dim customer table. And the reason we structure a warehouse this way is because you can imagine um, if every time you wanted to look at an invoice, you had to include all of these columns and then imagine all these other dimension tables, right? Then we're talking about super wide, thousands of columns in a table, which doesn't make any sense. So this is why we structure the data this way, so that it's nice and easy to use, and you can go get whatever you need at any time. And the way we think about this is you're never more than a couple joins away from answering the question that you have. And as you could see, when we looked at fact invoice, there was a customer key, and then the way you know where that customer key lives is because it's named exactly dim customer, right? It's one-to-one matching. And that's what we talk about in terms of like trying to reduce the reliance on documentation, is hopefully that you don't really have to even dig into the documents a ton, because when you just look at the tables, you can see what the relationships are and you can sort of intuitively understand how they relate together. But we do obviously offer the documentation in addition to help sort of ease any questions that there might be. So this is kind of the structure. Those are all the tables that are available, and then super easy to use. And then if you wanted to interact with that, um, it's a typical SQL interaction, right? You can write joins, you can write select statements. As we said, it's a full-featured Snowflake environment. So if you wanted to create your own views for analytics purposes, you wanted to create tables or dynamic tables, and all a dynamic table is in Snowflake is a table that updates at a schedule. So if you're familiar with this stuff and you're used to having to create store procedures and all that stuff is gone. So you just you say here's the logic for the table and refresh it at this cadence and it does that. So gives you kind of everything you could want to use, including all of the Snowflake intelligence stuff, right? So if you want to get in and dig in on the AI stuff, that is available there for you to start building. So that's the data factory. Your data delivered to you, cleaned up and structured in a way that is easy to use and purpose built for analytics and AI.
Hey, Alan, we had one more
Yeah.
question.
Mhm.
Is this something each company builds on their own, or is it a default pre-built?
So the structure is exactly the same for everyone, right? But obviously you're only getting your company's data. But we've done all of the engineering work. So the process of receiving this takes about 15 minutes of work on your side on your own to configure your Snowflake account. And then it takes about a 15-minute call with us, or maybe a 30-minute call with us. Let's be safe. A 30-minute call with us for you to accept the share. And so you go from it takes about all of 45 minutes to an hour for you to have all of the data available in your environment immediately. But it is the same structure based on what our understanding of best practices and best way to structure this data is for a RealGreen customer. So that is the data factory. So let's move on now to the next level of things here and start talking about decision intelligence. So we've got this great data factory. You know, we've got the data cleaned up and structured. But that in and of itself is not an end, right? That's not the purpose. The purpose of doing that work is so that we can then gain insights from the data, right? And so how do we gain insights? That's what we consider to be decision intelligence. And so what we're trying to do with decision intelligence is to make it kind of reduce the time that it takes you to get the information that you need so that you can make the important decisions about your business and reduce the amount of kind of interactions that have to happen there, reduce the amount of manual effort and inferences and conversation and drilling through and exporting data and all that stuff. Try to really expedite your ability to get to the meaningful answers that you need in order to drive your business forward. And so what does that really look like for us? So when we think about this, we think about what we call our intelligence hub. It's decision intelligence. It's the intelligence hub. And we think about kind of three core building blocks of how we enable rapid decision making. And so when we talk about analytics, traditionally we think in terms of descriptive, predictive, and prescriptive analytics. And what that means simply is descriptive analytics tell us what happened up to the current point. Predictive analytics tell us what we believe is likely to happen in the future based on what happened up to the current point. And then prescriptive analytics are what we use to help us make decisions based on what's happened in the past and what we think is going to happen in the future. So, what actions can we take to change course to improve our future outlook and get us to a better spot? So, those are kind of the three buckets traditionally of analytics. And then we have three tools. They don't map one to one, but three tools to kind of deliver those different layers of analytics, right? So, dashboards, everybody's familiar with dashboards. Um, Dashboards kind of provide a visual representation of the important things about our business. They can tell us what happened in the past. They can provide forward-looking metrics, so they can kind of go to those first two layers. Scorecards is a notion. that a lot of customers in our early adopter program have been excited about. It's where we've been able to kind of really get some traction. And this is just the notion of evaluating the performance of the most critical parts of our business. And so for a green business, we think about when we talk about, the most critical components that we want to evaluate, we think about a branch, we think about a technician, we think about a supervisor, we even think about maybe a customer as something that we want to evaluate, right? And so when we think about this area, we're talking about scorecards, and even a layer above that, we're of leaderboards, right? And trying to gamify some of this stuff and make it fun. I'm sure you guys have stuff like this in your organizations already, particularly for sales. Sales is always an area for this, right? Where we've got a leaderboard for sales, and we introduce some kind of friendly competition. You know, compensation and bonusing is obviously heavily based on that performance. So just introducing that notion of, you know, leaderboards that show kind of where we're sitting, and how we're doing comparatively, and then scorecards that kind of give that individual perspective on how that particular kind of critical area of our business is performing. And then the last one that we talk about is actions, and this is where we get into the prescriptive analytics, where we want to recommend things that we can do to improve future outcomes for our business. Straightforward example would be, if we identify that a customer is at risk of cancellation, that they're a churn risk because we've identified something that they've either um, you know canceled their service multiple times in a row, or maybe once we get Comm Center implemented for RealGreen, which I know is on the roadmap, and we start thinking about maybe we can look at customer sentiment via conversations, and we start identifying, hey, this customer had a negative interaction with customer support and they canceled a service. So we identify them as a risk, then maybe we can flag an action there, right? That customer needs to be followed up with, or maybe we need to offer a concession or something to kind of get them back on track. So this is kind of the three core elements that we think about. We think about dashboards, we think about scorecards, and we think about actions. And we can take a look together here at sort of how we're thinking about what that looks like. So this is a very early prototype of what this might look like. So this will change significantly once we get it inside the core the core product later this year. But the way we're thinking about this is uh, kind of what are the critical areas of the business, right? So sales, operations, customers, finance, marketing analytics, right, is a big one for our green customers. So thinking about kind of all of these elements and how we interact with them, and then giving, a way to kind of see all the different things that we talked about, right? So an example would be, this would be kind of descriptive analytics and showing us kind of, KPIs for where we are currently. And then we talked about the notion of like scorecards and leaderboards, right? And the ability to see kind of, this would be an example of a technician leaderboard and seeing how everybody is performing, and then being able to drill in and see the scorecard for that individual and where they're at. Introducing, you know, generative AI elements to be able to not just tell us the things that we already know are important, but also maybe go in and kind of look at all this data and synthesize and tell us some things that maybe we wouldn't have been aware of via summary, and then just give us the ability to kind of see for this specific person how the performance is going. Um, and then getting into things like, we talked about kind of the prescriptive analytics, right? And maybe identifying at-risk customers, or maybe we have good leads that have been stagnant for a certain amount of time, and we want to follow up on that, right? And make sure that we're um, either closing that deal, either winning or losing it, right? But making a call so that it's not sitting there in kind of a limbo state for an extended period of time. So This is kind of the direction that we want to go long term as we start to think about uh, you know the future of analytics and decision intelligence. Um, and to show you kind of where we're at current state, I can give an example. Um, this is demo data, right? So you can imagine kind of in a future state, right? Maybe we when we look at operations, we're pulling in some of these metrics in addition to others. So the this is an example of an operations dashboard with demo data and just showing some of those kind of critical operational KPIs, right? How many services were completed? Um, you know, how much square footage did we serve? What was our production? What are we producing per service? And then kind of how often are we going out to a location and not being able to complete the service? And then giving you the ability to kind of slice and dice the data differently, right? Like compare it by, you know, program or branch or employee, and choose, which KPI you want to compare against. So if we want to see, um, we want to see production per service by branch. Um, we can go in, we can go in and look at that and see, how our different branches are comparing across the different metrics. Give you the ability to see trends. Um, you know, the data here is a little silly because of the demos, but just give you the ability to see the trend over time compared to previous year, and then the ability to dig in on specific things like, what are the reasons that we're coming across that we were not able to complete service at for any given time period. Being able to control the time periods you want to see, being able to filter for all the things that are relevant for your business by branch, by market. Um, filter even all the way down to the employee level if we're talking about it, an operations view. So, and just as another example that we can look at together, this is a sales view that would show us kind of our pipeline, right, in terms of estimates requested, how many estimates were completed, and then how many of those converted to sales. Being able to split this between, count and dollar value, right? To see like if we want to see the number of estimates that we provided versus a dollar value, we can see that. And then being able to break these things down uh, in whatever way is most valuable to us, right? So we could break it down by customer location, we could see it by lead source, right? So if you want to see data by how many estimates originated from door to door, or how many originated from direct mail. You can see that based on what's inside of RealGreen. See the open leads and the status of those, right? By again, however you want to see it, lead source, branch, whatever, however you want to break it down. Look at the different statuses of the pipeline, where they're at, and then also again the ability to just look at trends over time. So um, this is kind of current state of where we're at, what we've been building with our early adopters, and then where this is going to go over the next probably 6 to 8 weeks is getting it into the core platform in a layout that looks like this, and start to build out more of these domain areas, right? So we've got operations, we've got sales. Those will get revamped in terms of their appearance. And then we will also be adding new content areas like finance. Finance is in progress right now. Finance will primarily be accounts receivable, um, and then just kind of continue to build out the detail as we go. So that's the direction of travel for decision intelligence. And then the last big piece, Danielle, do we have a question?
We had a few actually.
Okay. Okay.
Um, so I'm just going to go bottom up. Can we pull the hours the technician actually worked versus what they should have worked when you factor in budgeted client visit time from the price charts, budgeted drive time from the routing, etc.?
We can. That's a great question. We have the actual time as long as it was logged accurately in RealGreen right now, and we have I think like the estimated times for those services for those programs. I don't think we're providing that via the analytics, but it is something we could look at in the future. But that is something that definitely exists in the data warehouse right now. I just don't know that we're surfacing it in the analytics, but it is potentially something that we could consider. It's a good question.
I'm not exactly sure the context of this next question, but it says customer source data, question mark. Um,
So that would just be the lead source inside of RealGreen, right? You have the ability to configure what the source was for a lead. And so I'm pretty sure that's fully customizable on your side in terms of what your options are. And so it would just be pulling directly from your RealGreen instance of however you've categorized your leads. If you group them by like direct mail or phone outreach or you know, if you have any web campaigns or any of that kind of stuff, it would just be kind of however you categorize them on your side.
and then this was before you went through the dashboard. So it says,
Mhm.
how would you recommend this for enhancing sales pipeline visibility? This is important as we scale and bring on more SRs. I think you kind of went through that with the dashboard example.
Yeah, and I think we want to get a lot more robust than even what I showed in the dashboard, right? We want to get more sophisticated in terms of how we show the pipeline. So I think it's going to be a critical area for us, both in terms of like sales leaderboards, salesperson scorecards, and then also just the general kind of sales hub inside of the decision intelligence.
And then another one came in, are we able to compare data against the same date from different time periods? Example, Q1 26 versus Q1 25.
Yes, you can. We do show that in the like in the trends where we show like comparison to previous year. You can also pull custom date ranges so that you can see that. But in terms of like show me on the dashboard this period compared specifically to this period, that's not a feature that we offer right now, but it is something that we could consider on the roadmap. We offer it in some places where it makes sense, but it's not like universal across all dashboards where you could say, "Hey, show me in one column, current year to date versus previous year to date." We do on all of the metrics show year over year comparisons always for all metrics, but not necessarily like I want to see this quarter compared to previous quarter right now. Although again, that's the kind of customizability that you have complete control of in the data where in the data factory if you want to do that.
And then another question came in is, are the dashboard views pre-built and can we customize further?
Yeah. So dashboards are pre-built. But yes, that is the self-service piece that I was talking about earlier, is you can build your own inside of Sigma, inside of the decision intelligence. So basically what we do, just to give a real quick overview of what that looks like, I'm not going to spend too long on it, but we do expose the underlying data that power the dashboards. um, so I'm just going to do the operations one here as an example. Um, so like the this is the data um, that is that is actually feeding the dashboard for you, and so we give you access to all of that underlying data in essentially the not the raw format, but like a pre curated format for analytics purposes so that you can then build your own analytics on top of it. It's like an additional layer of curation on top of what's in the warehouse, right? So if you have the decision intelligence, in addition to, and you have the self-service, in addition to the cleaned and curated warehouse, you also get what we call the analytics data marts on top of that that you could then use to produce your own analytics inside of the decision intelligence tool, which is powered by Sigma.
And then a question came in, is it a separate charge? I think they mean for self-service.
Yes, that would be a sales conversation. Um, I don't want to say definitively what that looks like because that's not totally my world, but that would be a conversation that you would have with sales about what that looks like to have self-service in alongside decision intelligence. Okay. Um, Great questions. Keep them coming. Um, the questions you guys ask, I think, are kind of get to more relevant content for everybody. So please keep asking. The last piece we want to talk about before we open up for more questions generally is the AI piece, which I know everybody is excited about. So this is where we get to the point of saying like um, we want to try to shift the paradigm of looking at a dashboard and using a bunch of filters and a bunch of drill downs, and you have a question, and so you ask the data person in your organization. Maybe you have an analyst, or maybe it's just somebody who knows the data really well, and you say like, hey, look at this number, it looks off, what's going on with this. And you're like exporting the data into Excel, and you're working with it there, and you're doing different stuff. We really want to try to squash as much of that as possible. And this is really where we start to think about the dashboards and the decision intelligence to a certain extent as conversation starters, where you're seeing the metrics, you're seeing the things that are important, you're seeing the things that you need to know. But those things are always going to generate questions. And so instead of having to go ask somebody a question or having to do a bunch of manual digging, we want you to just be able to ask the data itself the question that you have, so that you don't so that you can get that answer on demand in real time as quickly as possible. Um, the conversational AI tools are never out of the office. They're never unavailable. They're never working on something else. So you can just sort of ask whatever question you have and get an immediate answer. So this is really the direction of travel that we want to go long term. We have to build all of this other stuff in order to make this work right. Right, like we have to build the data factor, and we have to get that right, and we have to have all the context and the governance in place so that the AI agents can give you good answers. So we have to do all of this work anyway. But where we really want to get to is the point where people are kind of looking at the decision intelligence information, and then if there's questions remaining after looking at that, they're asking the conversational AI tool how to interact with that. The cool thing about this is once it gets embedded in RealGreen, and this is true for all the dashboards as well, and all the decision intelligence, which I didn't talk about earlier, but you can, it's going to sort of natively respect all of the permissions and security that exists inside of RealGreen already. So if someone has access to decision intelligence, they're only going to see the data that they're allowed to have access to based on the branches that they're assigned to. And the same thing will be true of Ask Wave, right? They will only have access to the branches that they're assigned to, and also to the domains of data that you grant them access to inside of RealGreen, which will be a new feature that comes along with Wavelytics, is the ability to say, hey, this person can see operations data and sales data, but they can't see finance data. So just the ability to kind of have those controls in place. So really critical for us to make sure that the appropriate guardrails are in place, so that people are only seeing data that they're allowed to see, that they can have a wide-ranging and free-flowing and open conversation with the AI tool, but that conversation is restricted enough so that they can only see what they're allowed to see, and that it's relevant to the work that they're doing. So what does that look like for us? I can give you kind of an initial view of where that's going. So I do have some queries copied here that are some prompts copied here. Basically, the scenario that I'm going to walk through is the notion that we are implementing a route optimization tool, and we want to understand the ROI of that tool. So I'm going to put the question in here. I want to see how much revenue are we generating, how much production are we generating per tech day. So per day that a tech is out in the field. And I think what's cool is as you kind of watch this work, and I'm going to show you kind of the whole back end. Obviously, once we embed this in RealGreen, you will not see all of this conversation happening. But I think it's just helpful for initial context to kind of see that the agent it fielded the question, it wrote SQL, and it generated the output, right? So I wanted to see revenue per tech day, so it's produced a chart that we can look at. It's giving us some insights. It's going to run some other queries here, and it's also anticipating kind of where I was going to go next, which is in figuring out how to measure the ROI if we implement this tool, right? So it's making recommendations on how to do that. It's produced a chart here. You can see that you can flip between tables and charts, right? So this is really kind of the direction that we want to encourage people to go long term, is we want to enable this kind of conversational interaction, right? And then I'm going to ask it to produce a trend, so that I can see that, because so far it's produced bar charts um, and tables. So I'm going to ask it to produce um, the trend for me here, and it's going to go through and do that. You can see it's writing the SQL for you, right? So this is an example where, like, if you have the data factory, but you're not super comfortable kind of writing your own queries, right? You get tools like this, and then all of a sudden it unlocks you from having to rely on somebody who can do this work, whether that's somebody inside your org or outside your org. Um, and all of a sudden you can get these answers immediately, because we've built the tools in order for these models to interact and get you the answers you need. So now we've got a trend um, that we've produced over time. And then see what else I have in here. I think it kind of already did that. It kind of already did that step. And so I'm going to skip to here. Um, and I'm going to ask it to uh, suggest what a dashboard might look like that I could use to measure the ROI after I implement this tool, right? Because if we're going to implement a new tool, we don't just want to trust that it's working for us. So here it's recommending some metrics that we could use to track the ROI. And then it's going to go ahead, I think, and produce some of this for me, right? So it's recommending a dashboard. Here's the metrics it's saying. Um, it's showing uh, you know, what we would expect to see. And then it's saying what kind of improvements would we expect to see once we get when we're tracking the ROI, right? Go from $15 to $20 baseline to $25 to $35 baseline. So helping us in addition with target setting, right? So um, think the point of this is not so much to see like the specific answers that we're getting here, because this is all demo data, and it's kind of it doesn't tell a clean story, but the goal is really just to show you that um, the days of sort of the data being locked in a black box that you can't access, and all you can see is what we've pre-configured for you, and you can only see what's on the dashboard, and if it's not displayed on the dashboard, then it's a mystery, or you have to have somebody with deep technical knowledge to be able to go get that answer for you. That those those days are very nearly behind us, and we're going to be very much in a place over the next 3 to 6 months where you guys are able to interact with your data directly, get the questions you have answered immediately, and be able to make the decisions that you need to make with the right data in place to answer them, right? And you can then even think about this also translates over to the other side. If we go back to the data factory, I'm not gonna do it right now, but there's an AI tool here that will help you write SQL and get answers here. So you know this kind of tooling is kind of gonna, I think, take over and become the primary way that we interact with data going forward, right? So you'll have your dashboards, you'll have your analytics. Those things aren't going anywhere. It's critical to just be able to log in and see, hey, what was my production yesterday? What was my production this week? How am I trending towards my goals? All those things are critical. But when it comes to really like answering the specific questions that you have, I think the direction of travel for that is going to change significantly, and it's really going to become much more about interactivity, question and answer, kind of conversational English conversations with your data to get to where you want to go. Um, and that I think brings us, Danielle, any questions there? Or
Yeah, there was a handful of questions.
okay.
There was a few questions that came in earlier around the data sync in regards
Hmm.
to the data factory.
Hmm.
Is it 4 hours? They need to track techs and production in the field live. Um, and then also for the data factory, is there a way to customize it with our branding? And what's the refresh rate of our data?
Okay, so refresh rate right now is every 4 hours. Um, if you need it more frequently, that's definitely a conversation we can have. It's just there's additional cost associated because there's cost to us to build it more frequently. But we can definitely do that. I I would also like to see like which specific, because I don't think we need to build the whole warehouse, so that it can be consumed in near real time, right? But there potentially could be specific things that we need to consider building near real time. So we're happy to look into those. That's a conversation we can have. In terms of, sorry, what were the other questions, Danielle?
One was about custom branding. I'm not sure if that was related to, I think it was Data Factory just by the timestamp of when it came in. Um,
Okay. There's not really a way to brand. I guess I don't totally understand the use case there because it's an internal tool for your organization, right? And Snowflake is a technical tool that you would be adding to your tech stack, right? So I don't think that there's a way to brand that. It's not something that would be visible to customers or anything like that. But and then the same would sort of be for the decision intelligence would be delivered inside of PestPack. I mean, sorry, inside of RealGreen. So that would just look like a typical RealGreen screen when you look at the analytics there.
Great, thank you. Another question. Outside of building custom analytics with the Data Factory, how long can you estimate? Oh, we did that one. Estimate setup, right? If I signed up today, how long until I can access valuable data after I buy?
Yeah, we typically say like a week. Um, Basically from the time as long as there's some stuff you have to do on your side, but like I said, it's low lift, but typically about a week, let's say two at the most from when you sign up, you can have the data. There's really no barrier to it other than how fast you get your Snowflake account set up and then sort of what the workload is on our team to get to the work, but it's not there's no significant effort on either side.
Okay, great. And then is there an ability to enter data manually? We gather some data from text that's separate from RealGreen.
It's a great question. There is not right now the notion of sort of inputting data. You could do that in the data factory. I mean, you could load a CSV, right, into the data factory to populate a table. But in terms of getting it into the decision intelligence, like the analytics to be able to build inside of Sigma, like we were looking at, there is not a notion right now to do that. There is a feature coming in the future that will enable that, but I think we're talking more like second half of this year. And there will be kind of specific use cases for that. So I don't want to overpromise in that regard. It's definitely something that we're very focused on. It's something we hear very often from customers. We know that we need to have the ability to get kind of third-party data sources in there. Um, so we're focused on it, but the immediate sort of path to delivery there is not 100% clear to me. So I don't want to overpromise, but I do think the second half of this year that'll be something we're focused on.
Great. And then a question came in is, would this be useful for a company with only one branch versus one that has multiple branches?
I think it could be. I think it just depends on the level, the kind of the level of investment, right? That you want to make there. It I have a hard time imagining an organization with one branch really taking advantage of the data factory. That seems like a heavy lift to kind of have those resources in house, but potentially the decision intelligence. And I would think more in terms of like, you know, revenue and kind of amount of customers, right, would be more of a driver there. Because there is a little there, there is a little bit of a investment here to make this work worthwhile, and there has to be, I think, enough scale to make it really make sense. But if there are, you know, customers who are super interested at that level, those are still conversations we're interested in having, right? To try to learn those use cases. But we have typically at this point thought of it as, some of the the mid to larger size customers have tended to be the best fit, but we've also seen some smaller orgs make significant investments in data and get huge advancements in that. One of our one if anybody was at the conference, one of the pest control companies who presented on main stage, that's not a it's not a huge company by any means, but they have made a significant investment in tech as a growth strategy for them, and it has worked really well for them. So I think it's hard to say definitively. Typically, it's going to be organizations with a little more scale where it makes sense, but that doesn't mean that somebody who's a little bit smaller but really sees tech as a growth path for them couldn't take advantage and win some market share by using these tools.
And we have two last questions if we can get to them before.
Mm-hmm.
How is this different? I think references to decision intelligence. How is this different than running normal reports within RealGreen?
Yeah, so I mean, I think I'm going to sort of ignore the Ask Wave portion for that purpose because I think that's obviously very different. But in terms of like the way that the dashboards function, the goal would be for ours to be much more dynamic, allow you more customization, allow you more ability to drill in and filter, and allow you to see things represented more visually in terms of how you compare and how you're trending and all that sort of stuff. So um, I think the reports in RealGreen tend to be a little bit more static, a little bit more tabular, kind of give you a snapshot view, whereas we would be providing not just that stuff, but also trends, forecasts, kind of forward looking and the prescriptive pieces as well.
And then one last question is, when is this available to RealGreen customers?
That is the $1 million question. We are, I'm going to say Q2, and I know that's vague, but that will kind of transition us, I think, into the last piece of business here, which is that, um, and I'll hand it off to Danielle here, but we are targeting a Q2 launch for this. We will get more specific on the dates over the next few months, over the next couple months, probably, next month or so. We will be more specific on dates, and then we can give you more clarity there. But the goal is absolutely to start getting this out there to everybody beyond just our early adopters in Q2 of this year.
And that's in regards to decision intelligence. Reminder, the data
Oh,
factory, that's
yeah,
available today.
yeah, 100%. You can have Data Factory today. Just the decision intelligence piece is the one where we're still in early adopter phase. Yep, great point.
Awesome, great. So that brings us to almost two. So as I mentioned at the beginning, if you want early visibility into launch timing, please scan the QR code and fill out the quick form, and we'll be sure you're first to know. As always, utilize RealGreen community site as much as possible. There's a ton of extra resources on there for you to self-learn. We're really excited that you all joined us today for this Wavelytics update. We did record this session and we'll share it out in the upcoming days. And although this ends our presentation, we'd like to keep the conversation going. My email and as well as Alan's is on the bottom of the next screen. So we'll give you a minute to do the QR code and then flip to the last screen. And then really thank you for your engagement and stay tuned for more launch details. Have a great rest of your day, guys.